friends, welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute since we talked about a podcast that I am loving. No, it is not because I have not been listening to podcasts. It is because I haven't had a free moment, but I literally have cleared my schedule so that we can talk about this insanely amazing podcast that I don't think I have been as addicted to since Serial. And I don't take that claim lightly. The podcast is called Cold. If you have not heard of it, sit yourself down because I'm going to school you on why you need to listen to the Cold podcast. So to start, we'll talk about how I found out about this podcast. I watched a video, I love Leanne Says, and I was watching her video where she did a whole get ready with me where she talked about podcasts. And I did not like all the recommendations that she made. Some of them I had listened to and I was like, no girl, it's not that good. But I finally started listening to Cold and it is so insane. Essentially, it is about a young woman named Susan Powell who's living in West Valley City, Utah, which, side note, Utah is just like a banana state. Like, it feels like the real Wild West out in Utah. I'm sorry if you live there, but like everything I've ever heard about Utah just sounds like absolute bananas. So that intrigued me alone. And essentially the premise is that she disappeared from her home randomly one night after a snowstorm, leaving behind her two sons and her husband, Josh Powell. And throughout the 18 episodes, they essentially take you on a journey of understanding Josh's background, understanding how Josh and Susan met, going through, you know, every stage of their marriage up until when she disappeared. And then it takes you through the investigation of her husband, Josh Powell, who was the only person of interest, essentially the only suspect in the case. And along the way, it also looks at the dichotomy of Josh's family. And this story, I had never heard of it. I did not know anything about it. So going into it, I didn't have a whole lot of background beyond basically what I told you guys just now. And I will not lie, the episodes are long. They're a little bit over an hour. It's like an hour 5, an hour 10 minutes per episode. And at first I wasn't super into it. Like, I listened to the first episode and it took me a while to get through it because it moves slowly. And at first, as someone who doesn't know the background of the case, I'm like, why are we starting here? Where is this going? Why do I need to know all about Josh's childhood and like his background and like his girlfriend prior to meeting and dating and then marrying Susan? But like, it's all relevant. And it's one of the few times where I have felt like every episode of the podcast is incredibly intentional and necessary to understand the full dynamics and the full craziness that is this case. This is one of the few true crime podcasts I've listened to where we get perhaps the most intimate look into people's lives that I've ever seen. You get not only Susan Powell's journals and emails and Facebook messages, you get Josh's audio journals, his handwritten journals, his father, who's an integral piece of this crazy puzzle. He has video recording journals. He also has handwritten journals. Like, first off, who journals this much? Like, if you're a journaler, I commend you because the amount of journaling these three people did, I just did not know there were journalers out there. Like, they literally documented so many aspects of their lives in these journals, and the podcast brings all of that in. There are also so many people who were a part of this, whether it be family, friends, law enforcement, social workers. Like, there were tons of people that this podcast group was able to interview and bring in, and there was a lot of, which can be a little bit snooty. There were a lot of moments where the narrator was like, this has never been recorded before, or this person has never talked to anyone before. And I was like, all right, guys, bring it down. The podcast's already good. I don't need you to be telling me all that. But it is just so thorough. And if you're someone like me who's listened to a lot of true crime podcasts, you would know that getting that information either is typically impossible or very rare. Now, as the case unfolds, it makes more sense how he was able to get access to all this information or how the team was. But again, I didn't know the full backstory before listening to it. I've been on April break this week, and I think I've listened to 10 or 12 episodes. Like, I'm super into this, and I literally spent all day yesterday cleaning and like reorganizing and like just going through and decluttering a bunch of stuff in my apartment, and this is all I had on. And I don't think I would be opposed to listening to it a second time. Like, that's how into this I am. I will warn you, it is maybe one of the most difficult podcasts for me to be able to listen to, as much as I'm captivated by it, because there are some really heartbreaking things that have happened. There are some really like creepy things that were discovered through the investigation, and things that would make you really uncomfortable. So it's like these weird moments where like you want to know more, but you're also like, God, like, people live like this. Like, it just feels like a made-for-TV movie, but it's so much worse because it was real life. And when it's Lifetime and it's, you know, made for TV, you're like, oh, this is ridiculous and over the top, but like, it's just TV. This really happened. This was a real thing that happened, and I just can't imagine that we live in a world where things like this happen. And so I highly recommend it if you're a true podcast junkie like I am and you haven't listened to Cold. Definitely go subscribe, binge all the episodes, because it is just so well done. Like, I am just so into this, and I'm really appreciative of someone taking the time to go through what must have been just sheer months, if not years of work to map this story out and figure out how to capture it into these 18 hours, essentially, which is what the podcast is. So I'll leave their website down below if you want to go to their website, because they have a bunch of things that they've included, like artifacts and pictures and things like that, which I know I always love looking at when I'm really into a podcast. But if you guys have any true crime podcast recommendations, let me know down below in the comments, and I will talk to you guys in my next video real soon. Bye.